now. Thank you so much for joining us. Really love having you here. This is, I think, our third SOFA series, which happens the last Wednesday of every month. We've got lots of topics coming up, and I hope you will join us for at least some of them. I'm Erin Selby. I'm the Director of Education and Training for UFCW. Lots of you I know are UFCW members, but I think we've got some other folks here with us as well. Joining us today is Mike Jensen. He is the program supervisor for the Science Gallery and the Planetarium at the Manitoba Museum. Thank you for joining us, Mike.
Not a problem.
Mike, I wanted to ask you before we got started, what do you have to study in order to become the supervisor of the Science Gallery and the Planetarium? How does that happen for any of the kids who are watching us? How can they be you when they grow up?
Well, it's my path to where I am right now is actually a bit convoluted, but essentially, I mean, in terms of education, I have a journalism degree, and my original plan and love was to get out there and communicate to the world about the various things that were going on. But I got led to the museum just sort of as a part-time gig, starting things out, and I loved science, especially space and astronomy as a kid, learned all sorts of things about it. And so I couldn't pass up the opportunity to work at the planetarium. And wouldn't you know, I loved it there and eventually worked my way up to where I'm developing science programs. And I realized that I was actually combining my two loves of journalism and writing and communicating with that of science and space and astronomy. So I sort of came to terms quite a few years ago with the idea that I may not be the traditional journalist, but that I'm still doing what I love. And that's kind of how I'm led to where I am.
You're still going to be educating us. Tonight, of course, we're talking about Saving Lake Winnipeg, and we're going to talk a little bit about the state that it's in right now and what all of us maybe can do to get it back to where we'd like it to be. So, Mike, I'm going to let you take over, and I'm looking forward to hearing what we can do to help Lake Winnipeg.
Excellent. Okay, well, I will get things going here. I think what I want to try to do is I'm just going to remove Erin's pin there so that I'm a bit more central for everybody out there. So I just want to let everybody know we set the chat up so that you can chat with me. As you might imagine, this program is a bit interactive, and so I'll be asking questions. We have some polls that I would hope that everybody will participate in, because I don't want this just to be a lecture. I want to be able to include you in the discussion as much as possible. So feel free to put things in the chat. And of course, there is a Q&A function as well. And I know Erin will be monitoring that. And we'll see if we have time for questions at the end. So just so everybody knows, this Save the Lake program was originally developed for our science gallery. And you can see my background picture here is of the Lake Winnipeg exhibit in our science gallery. But of course, when COVID hit and we had to close down the science gallery, we wanted to be able to convert some of our programs to the virtual world. And this was the first one that I did up, and I'm very proud of it and very happy about the results that we've got from it. It's originally designed for about the grade 7 to 10 level, but when I was approached and asked if I could do this for the SOFA series for what we assume would be a lot of adults out there, I said, absolutely. What is happening to Lake Winnipeg is affecting Manitobans of all ages. And so there is no reason why I can't do this program for that. So without any further ado, I sort of want to get things started here. I do want to talk a little bit about what the issues are. Many of you probably know them, but I do want to talk about what is the problem with Lake Winnipeg, or one of the problems. But then afterwards, we're going to do the simulator, and it's actually this object right off to my shoulder here is the simulator that's in the science gallery, but we've actually been able to take that program and put it in through this virtual method. And so you will be participating in that by voting on various solutions that we can enact for all the issues facing Lake Winnipeg. So let's begin. I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully, if everything works right, as I'm sure you're all used to by now with technology. Things don't always as probably they do. What you should be seeing is another picture of our science gallery. If you can't, please let me know in the chat, or if you see any other sort of technical issues, my voice cuts out or anything, or you're not seeing the picture that you're supposed to see. Also, let me know, sometimes gray bars appear on the screen. Aaron's letting me know that everything looks good. So I think that's fantastic. So I will get things going. And even though I know most of our viewers out there are Manitobans, I just want to show this map of what we sometimes call Lake Winnipeg, or sorry, not Lake Winnipeg, Manitoba's Great Lakes. I'm sure most of you are familiar with them out there. You should be hopefully able to see my arrow on the screen. And you'll see, of course, Lake Manitoba, Lake Winnipegosis. But of course, the massive one, the largest one, is Lake Winnipeg itself. You've got the South Basin down here, and then, of course, the much larger North Basin. What you may not realize is where Lake Winnipeg empties to. It empties into the Nelson River, which runs north up into Hudson Bay. And so basically every bit of water that's there eventually flows into Hudson's Bay and into our oceans. It's a very shallow lake. If anybody's ever been to it, you know that it's not very deep. The average depth is only about 9 meters down in the South Basin, 13 meters up in the north. It's definitely not a deep lake, but it is the 6th largest freshwater lake in Canada, and it is the 11th largest in the world. But perhaps one of the less positive titles that it has been given is it has now been designated one of the top 10 most endangered lakes in the world, and we'll talk about why very, very shortly. But I love maps, and so I'm going to leave it on this map for a second, and this is where I'm going to start to poke at the audience here and make sure that you're all awake out there. And so I would like you to tell me in the chat, and please don't be shy. I and myself and Aaron are the only ones who can see your answers. And besides, there are no wrong answers or dumb answers. I want you to tell me, what else can you see on this map? I pointed out the lakes, but what else is on this map? Go ahead and type that in the chat and let me know what you. Oh, wow, right off the bat, a few of you pointed out that you could see dams, power dams, someone said. Yeah, that's not usually the first thing that gets mentioned. I'll hang on to that for just a second. I see somebody mentioned Dauphin as one of the towns. So there are definitely some towns and cities that are located on this map. Of course, Winnipeg, Dauphin, Gimli. Rivers, yes, there are definitely some rivers, many that are identified. You've got the Dauphin River, the Barons River, Blood Vein, Winnipeg River down here. The one that's actually not labeled is the Red River, that everybody should know, of course, comes up from the United States and into Winnipeg. Somebody mentioned the Netley-Lebo Marsh. Yes, we'll be talking about marshes and wetlands. Heading back to those generating stations and those power dams, that is definitely something noted here on these maps. These are these sort of jagged arrows that look like lightning. That does indicate the generation of electricity from those spots. And we will be talking about that. It's a very important part of what we're discussing here. What about the different colors? Of course, blue indicates the lakes, but you'll notice there's a light green and then there's a dark green. Any sort of thoughts as to what that could represent on this map? Maddie says dark green is forest. That's a good guess. Yes. Anybody else want to give it a stab? Okay, well, it looks like everybody else is like, well, I don't really know what those different colors mean. So good job, Maddie, for taking a good guess at it. And yes, on most maps, when you see sort of a dark green, and especially if you know this region of Manitoba, you assume that it might mean forest lands. Oh, someone's saying elevation. That is also something that's possible. Permafrost, someone says. Interesting. That is also a possibility. And someone else says marshes. So those are all very good answers. but I'm going to show you a bigger map that actually shows you what those different colors mean. The light green is referring to the Lake Winnipeg watershed. Now, for those of you that don't know, watersheds aren't very complicated. Everybody knows the idea that water travels downhill because of gravity, and it works in small areas like a sink or a puddle on the ground, but it also works with large areas of land. You've got this massive area here that stretches all the way from sort of that eastern border of British Columbia and Alberta all the way through over into Ontario, Lake of the Woods area, and even right over to almost touching Lake Superior, and then down into the United States. This is a massive watershed, and it's all connected by the rivers, the creeks, the streams, even underground aquifers. It's the idea that any water that falls into this light green area will eventually travel through the pathways to get to Lake Winnipeg. And that is why it's referred to as the Lake Winnipeg watershed. Every region of our land is a watershed of some kind. So the dark green is referring to the other watersheds that are out there. But the Lake Winnipeg watershed is the one that I want to talk about here. And as you can see, it's massive. It's an area that takes up 400 times the size, it's not 400, 40 times, pardon me, I'm getting my numbers all wrong here, 40 times the size of Lake Winnipeg itself. And it includes cities like Calgary, Saskatoon, Regina, Kenora, and down into the States, Grand Forks and Fargo. There are 4 United States that are part of the Lake Winnipeg watershed, 5 Canadian provinces. Every person that is part of a city or town or homestead or farm, you are part of the system that puts water into Lake Winnipeg. And that's truly where the issue starts to come up. Someone's put in the chat a prehistoric Lake Agassiz. Yes, the formation of our lakes and many of our river systems all had to do with the point in time where the glaciers receded and those lakes were sort of carved out. And that has affected the shape and condition of the watershed. So yes, this is something that goes back thousands of years. And of course, humans have existed in this watershed for thousands of years. Okay, so now I want to talk about what we use Lake Winnipeg for. And this is where I'm going to bring up my first poll. I actually skipped over the first question, so we're not going to do that one. I wasn't too sure how many people have actually been to the science gallery. So I'm going to launch the polls right now. But what I want the question I want you to answer is question number 2 only. What do you use Lake Winnipeg for? Many of you may have been there for swimming or fishing. Maybe you go to the beach. Maybe you have a cottage. Maybe you do all of those things. Maybe it's something completely different. Or do you believe that you don't use Lake Winnipeg at all? So I'm launching the polls. And like I said, I only want you to answer question number 2. Please don't move on to the other questions. We're going to get to them later. So question number 2, hopefully everybody can see it. I see someone said in the chat that you have a cottage there. That's fantastic. But I'm not seeing any votes coming in there. Is everybody able to see the poll? Go ahead and vote if you can see it. If you can't see it, let me know, because that's a bit concerning on my end. It's stuck on question 1. Interesting. Okay, that's different. All right, let's, oh, I see it. It'll let us submit it only if we are answering the one question. Okay, then let's get through this then. Okay, if you can only see the first question, then let's go ahead and answer it. I'm sorry that I didn't do this earlier. And someone's saying the submit button isn't working. Well, let's just do it. Go ahead and answer question number 1. If you have a favorite exhibit at the Science Gallery at the Manitoba Museum, let me know. But is it still that it still doesn't submit? Well, we may have to be doing this another way. All right. If it's not working, then we are going to just do this another way then, because I, of course, want to keep moving. Okay, well, let's do that. We're going to do this a different way. So in the chat then, tell me, somebody said they have a cottage there. What do you use Lake Winnipeg for? Put it in the chat. Oh, it worked. Oh, okay. So should I put the poll back up there? I'm so confused now. I want to use the polls, but oh, you have to select an answer for every question in the poll. Okay. Well, that might be a bit of a problem. Okay, so we won't use the polls then. All right. So I see recreation, cottage at Gimli, drinking water, someone says, going to the beach. I'm curious, is there anybody in the audience who thinks that they don't use Lake Winnipeg at all? If you do think that that's the case, put that in the chat. I'm curious if there's anybody who thinks that. Some more people saying good, go to the beach. Someone says it's a 4 to 5 hour drive for them, so they do not use it directly. Interesting. I think there was a reason why you probably worded it that way. So yes, a lot of people will say, oh, I don't actually use it. It's too far away, or I've never actually been there. But the truth is, most Manitobans do use Lake Winnipeg. And one of the ways that they do that, of course, is by using electricity. Most of Manitoba's electricity is generated by the water traveling into Lake Winnipeg and traveling through those various power dams that we talked about very early on. And that electricity has traveled all throughout our province. In fact, it's so much energy is generated that way that we actually sell electricity to other provinces. It represents about $500 million in export sales for Manitoba. So it's actually a very lucrative way for Manitoba to make money. And of course, it powers most homes in some way. The laptop or tablet in which you are watching this program, lights in your house. Some of you may use other forms of energy to heat or run your appliances, but for the most part, people are using electricity that comes generated from Lake Winnipeg. Fishing, I think somebody mentioned in their chat that they like to go fishing. Recreational fishing happens quite a bit on Lake Winnipeg, but also commercial fishing. There are people that do it for a living by fishing walleye or pickerel, goldeye, sauger, whitefish, lots more. There's about $30 million in revenue that can be generated thanks to the fishing industry. A lot of you mentioned cottages, lakeside living. But it's not just people who do it on a seasonal basis. There are about 25,000 permanent residents of Lake Winnipeg that live in 30 communities along the shores, and they include about 11 First Nations communities as well. It's a food source. Now, not just for fishing, there's actually wild rice that is harvested along the shores of Lake Winnipeg. Indigenous peoples have been doing that for thousands of years as a source of food. And so Lake Winnipeg, of course, is a food source. Ice roads, very important for our communities that are more remote. In wintertime, those roads are very valuable for the transportation of supplies and services to get to those communities. Just as a quick little aside, I actually did this program for a group of grade 12 students down in California. And I thought when I did that, I would have to just explain the whole concept of ice roads. These are kids that live in the desert area of California, where the temperatures, of course, are way above the freezing mark. And I thought I'd have to explain it. But as soon as I mentioned it, the chat just lit up with ice road truckers, ice road truckers. I guess a lot of them had seen that show. So I didn't have to explain it to them at all. They actually knew that. All right, getting back to this. Someone mentioned clean water. Winnipeg, of course, does not get its water from Lake Winnipeg, but there are communities, industries, especially along the North Basin and into the Nelson River, that do rely on Lake Winnipeg itself for their water. Of course, it's a natural habitat for many different species of plants, animals, fish that are in this ecosystem, not just in the lake itself, but along the shore. And relies on the lake as well. And of course, tourism. This is a big attraction outside of COVID, of course. We get about 1.1 million tourists per year, and they put about $110 million into the province's economy, with just the tourism around Lake Winnipeg. So all of these things rely on Lake Winnipeg to be healthy. Now, what does it mean to be a healthy lake? That's the question. What ingredients do you need? Turns out the ingredients that you need are actually very similar to what a human body needs in some ways. In some things they're not, but let me show you what some of those things are. Food, pretty obvious. Human body needs it. So does a lake. Food that can be done for the animals that live in the lake, but also food that can be provided for the peoples that live along it as well. Clean water, that's a pretty obvious one. As I mentioned, it's important for drinking, but the lake itself needs the water to be clean in order for it to be healthy. Oxygen, again, the human body needs this, but so does a lake. Creatures that live in it cannot survive, plants cannot survive without a good supply of oxygen in the lake itself. Now, here's one that humans don't need, at least hopefully not, top predators, but they are a very important ingredient for a lake. It's important that there are top predators, both as a way of keeping species in check, but also as an indication that the lower species are healthy and providing food for those top predators. And the final one is nutrients. And of course, for the human body, we're used to nutrients like vitamins and minerals, but there are definitely nutrients that are an important part of what's needed for a healthy lake. Let's actually start with nutrients very quickly. I'm going to explain what these are. 4 nutrients that are very important for Lake Winnipeg: nitrogen, calcium, phosphorus, and iron. What happens is the nutrients, the levels of those nutrients need to be kept in check. And so in a natural ecosystem, you have all the creatures that live in it, the animals and the plants, bottom feeders like crayfish, snails. They take down plant and animal waste and break it down into these nutrients. And then what they do is they kind of poop them out as waste. And that waste then gets absorbed by plants. Those plants get eaten by animals. Those animals get eaten by other animals, and the whole cycle repeats again. Those animals and plants will eventually die and decompose, and they are then consumed again by other plants that are living. And in a natural ecosystem, this never-ending cycle is very healthy and helps to keep those nutrients that you see in check. Food is a pretty obvious one. A healthy lake has got to have lots of food in order to help support all the life that could exist there. And it's all up and down the food chain. Starting off with green algae. So green algae is what's known as a primary producer. It uses sunlight to produce food for themselves. And of course, by producing food for themselves, it becomes very healthy and is then used as food by other animals. Other microscopic animals that exist in a lake could be things like diatoms. These are kind of like microscopic algae. They're an important part of the food chain. Zooplankton, my favorite thing to talk about, a lake's best friend. These are kind of like these filter feeders. They will eat tons of algae, and that helps to keep the algae's growth under control. And then the zooplankton themselves become food for other animals. Now, if you've been to Lake Winnipeg, you may be familiar with the mayfly, both the nymph form of it and the adult form for it. Some people consider them to be pests, but they're actually good food for many animals that live along the lake, and they are a sign of a healthy lake. The nymph form of a mayfly actually takes about 2 years to grow into the adult phase. If a lake isn't healthy enough, then they won't survive and you won't see a lot of adults. So if you are being pestered by mayflies, then I know that's a bit of a pain, but it's actually a good thing for the lake. And of course, you've got some plants like cattails. These are very common around, especially around the southern basin, but along a lot of the shore of Lake Winnipeg. These are, of course, an important food source and a source of habitat for all the wildlife that's there. Clean water is pretty obvious. Clean water is done by that whole cycle of digestion and excretion of food. It helps to filter out and clean all the the various nutrients and other pollutants that can be found in a lake. So you've got plants that live above the lake, like those cattails that I just mentioned. You got plants that live right on the lake, like lily pads, to keep the temperature of the lake nice and even. And of course, our habitat as well. And you've got the submergent plants, plants that live solely underneath the water. And they are a very, very a good way of producing oxygen for a lake, which of course is our other ingredient for a healthy lake. And oxygen is a pretty obvious one. Just as a human body needs it, so does the lake. You've got to have green algae that will help to produce some oxygen. Some of those plants that I just mentioned that live under the water produce oxygen, but you can also get oxygen from the wave action that takes place as the waves roll on top of the surface or crash onto the shore. They will gather up air, oxygen from the air, and that helps to mix into the lake as well. And then finally, we got the top predators. This is the one that the human body doesn't need, but a lake does. You've got ones like the lake sturgeon, a pretty important fish for Lake Winnipeg. Beautiful fish too. What I love about them is that they live up to 200 years, which I think is incredible. You've got birds, of course, like an osprey or, oh dear, I can't remember what the other one is. Oh, I usually remember these things. A heron, great blue heron. Oh goodness, you'd think I'd never done this program before. Those are of course top predators. You can see there's a fish being caught in the talons. And of course bears. Bears are most definitely one of the top predators. They of course hunt along the shore, maybe a little bit into the water as well, and are definitely an important part of it. And no list of top predators would be complete without putting humans in there. We are predators, whether it's the fish in the lake. Oh, somebody mentioned ospreys are awesome. I completely agree. That's fantastic. Yes. So those are our 5 ingredients of a healthy lake. And I'm going to put them all up on the screen. And what I want you now, of course, in the chat, I want you to tell me which of these is the biggest issue for Lake Winnipeg right now. One of these 5, or if you think it's actually something else, put that in the chat. But I want to see what everybody thinks it is. And I have a feeling I've got a very educated audience out there, and I think I do based on the first couple of answers. Okay, some different ones coming in. Give it a few more seconds for people to type in their answers. Okay, interesting. All right, so I see a lot of people. There was clean water was mentioned. Top predators was actually mentioned. Those, of course, are issues that are facing Lake Winnipeg. But most of you, oh, even somebody said oxygen. And in all of those cases, those are certainly issues. But they all come out of one big issue that's happening with nutrients. And someone hit the nail on the head. Nutrients are the problem, but not just the fact that there are nutrients, but that there are too many of them. Too much of a good thing is actually the phrase that you think of when it comes to nutrients. And to be honest, the issue is with us, the humans. We are adding to the amount of nutrients that are going into Lake Winnipeg, and it's what's causing this excess in nutrients. The big one is phosphorus. There's an issue also with nitrogen, but nitrogen comes a lot from natural sources. So really the one that humans have the control over and are making the impact with is phosphorus. There is no one community or group of people that are to blame. I don't want to even use that word. Really, this is an issue that is facing all Manitobans. First of all, phosphorus does exist naturally. It is through the decomposition of plants and organic material that you are able to get phosphorus naturally into an ecosystem. But humans are doing it as well through our sewers and through our septic systems, farms with the manure, and they're using fertilizers, homes that are using detergents and shampoos. We are all part of the contribution of phosphorus into our water systems and into the lake. So I've heard people say, oh, they point the finger at one group or the other. That is not the case. We all are having an impact. And that's why the solutions need to be something that are part of all of our thinking. So here's a picture of Lake Winnipeg from space, and don't be taken away by the date that's on it there. Just because this is an 8-year-old picture does not mean that this photo is not accurate. This clearly is not a healthy lake, and this is why Lake Winnipeg has been designated by that. It is most definitely clearly not what a lake should be looking like. And like I said, it's because of these excess amounts of phosphorus. There are 8,000 tons of phosphorus entering Lake Winnipeg each and every year. The lake itself can naturally handle about 2,500 tons of it. You do your math. I'll do it for you. It's 5,500 tons that are left over. And that is about the equivalent of 1,000 elephants of phosphorus. And that is what's contributing to what's known as blue-green algae blooms in the lake. Now, hold on a second, you might be saying. I thought algae was a good thing. It was a food that's important for a healthy lake. And it is. You're right. I'm glad you were listening. Green algae, it's been blooming on Lake Winnipeg for centuries. It is a part of a healthy ecosystem, providing food for the plants, fish, and animals that exist there. But this blue-green algae is what the problem is. Turns out it's not even algae at all. It's actually a bacteria called cyanobacteria. And this stuff is toxic. And over the past few decades, Lake Winnipeg's algae blooms have contained more and more of this blue-green algae. And it has become very, very dangerous. And if you've seen it, it looks something like this. It's gross, it's disgusting, washes up onto the beaches. The beautiful beaches that we have at Lake Winnipeg has this bluish green ooze that comes onto it. You should not be doing in this picture, which is putting your foot or any body part into that algae. It is not healthy. It turns out these toxins from this bacteria can actually get into your skin. It can cause rashes. It can get into your bloodstream and cause some gastrointestinal issues, to the point where when this algae sort of starts to build up, they actually put out advisories and warnings saying, do not go into Lake Winnipeg if you see all this stuff. Don't let your dogs or other livestock go into it. And drink the water, and do not eat the fish. Yeah, the algae looks gross, said somebody, and that is absolutely true. It is disgusting and is definitely a big problem. So what the issue is you got all this blue-green algae, and it's alive, and it's using up oxygen. It's sucking up oxygen from the lake, and then when it dies, it uses up more oxygen. And as a result, it also starts to give off nutrients. Those nutrients are released by this blue-green algae, so you get more phosphorus being added into the lake. Eventually, it just gets to a point where literally the fish and aquatic creatures and living things that live in a lake are literally being choked out or smothered by this action. Fish are dying, and of course, when they die, they decompose. The nutrients that they have in them are also added to the lake. This, you can see, it's like this feedback loop that keeps going and going and going. This whole process has a big name to it, and I'm not going to use too many big tall words here because people start to tune out when people do that. But this is one I will use: eutrophication. It's the idea that a lake is unhealthy because the amount of nutrients are in excess and overloaded the lake's natural system and is essentially choking it out. So where is it coming from? Well, as I mentioned, you've got the people that live along the lake. They've got septic systems. Those eventually leach or are drained into the lake itself. You've got farmers. They're using fertilizers on their field. People use fertilizers on their yards too. So I'm not pointing the finger at farmers here. People in cities and towns use fertilizers and detergents and cleaning products. That's all going into the lake. Farms do have lots of manure, even though it's organic. If you have too much of it, if it's too close to a water source, all that phosphorus leaches into a lake. And of course, you cannot forget about cities. And Winnipeg is one of the biggest ones, but so are cities like Grand Forks and Fargo. We're all putting our sewage into the Red River and other tributaries, and it's flowing north into Lake Winnipeg. And we've added to this problem by draining all of the natural filters that we have out there that could have helped to mitigate this. And we're talking about marshes and wetlands. When European settlers came into the region, they wanted to build farms and have farmland that would help to grow crops. And to do that, they had to drain some of the wetlands. And that drainage of that natural filtering of the lake has definitely impacted its ability to handle all this excess phosphorus. So this is a really old picture of Winnipeg. You can see our city there, but what it's showing, all the gray areas are actually showing all of the marshes that used to exist in our region that now for the most part have been drained out completely. And so that's the natural defense of lakes to be able to survive and last. And so clearly that's created a problem. So all that, now it's time to have the fun stuff. Our focus now is we need to decrease phosphorus in Lake Winnipeg. We need a plan to solve this problem, and this is where you are going to come into play. You have to think, of course, about the environment. Obviously, that's what you're here for, but no problem will come to play without the people being on board with it. If you do a solution that no one is happy with, no one will want to do with it, and it won't happen. And of course, you gotta think about money. I hate to say it, in today's society, money drives everything. And if you make something too expensive, taxes go up, people don't want to pay, they're unhappy, and now you're back to the problem with people being unhappy. We're not going to solve this problem by affecting or impacting those three categories too much. Okay, I am going to now switch things over, and there's me again. Hello, everybody. But I'm going to switch things over to our simulator, the Lake Winnipeg Shared Solutions Simulator. So I'm just going to share that now. So you should, it's in French right now, but don't worry, I will change that. Can everybody see the simulator on the screen? Just indicate that. If I just get one person making sure that I'm okay here. Yes, okay, fantastic. Okay, so here is what we're going to do. I'm going to start it off in English. We are going to save the lake. Here's how we do it. We need to shrink this green algae bloom. Now, I know I said it's blue-green, but we just, in order to make it noticeable here, we had to make it green. We're going to slow the flow of phosphorus, these yellow dots that are flowing in from cities, farms, and communities into the lake. There they are right there. And so each of those yellow dots is going to be an issue that we're going to click on, or at least a few of them anyways, and then we're going to be given 3 solutions that we are going to choose from in order to be able to determine what is the best one. Remember, we're looking out for the environment, happy people, being smart with money, but don't be afraid to think of a solution that is actually out of the box, future thinking, even if it might be a bit more expensive or people might not be happy about it. Sometimes you got to make those tough decisions, but in the end, be smart with your time and choices. Well, time is controlled by me, so the lake is counting on us. Now, normally I would have brought the polls back up in order for us to be able to do this, but unfortunately, we're not going to be able to do this. So what's going to happen is when we go for it, and I read out the 3 solutions, in the chat, you're going to put which one you like the best, 1, 2, or 3. And then we'll just sort of take, as best as I can tell, the majority vote there, and that's the solution that we are going to go for. Hopefully that will work out just fine. It may take us an extra second or 2. So let's get things started. We're going to start the game. Here comes our first one. I want to make sure I find an interesting one, though. That's not a good one. No, I don't like that one either. This is a good one. Get water efficient. So talked a lot about sewage and water that we are putting out as waste. Treatment plants work overtime to treat that wastewater before it gets into the lake. So is there a way we could use the water a bit more efficiently so that less of it needs to be treated? So here's solution number one. Don't vote just yet. Listen to all three solutions, and then I will tell you when to vote. Maybe we install personal water treatments. So the idea is rather than having a big, large plant, maybe each home has their own water treatment system. And that way you can actually use the recycled water as, well, maybe even drinking water. I know that sounds disgusting, but it actually can happen. Note, there is a warning with this. It might be pricey and people might not like it. Solution number two, install water efficient fixtures. Many of you probably are already doing this in your home. The less you use, the less you waste. But is it really that simple? Interesting. And finally, the third solution, you don't really need sprinklers for your lawns and car washes, right? Let's ban that non-essential water use right off the bat. Notice, of course, that may not make people happy. And of course, that type of control requires some price. So go ahead, put in the chat number 1, 2, or 3, just one of those three numbers. 1 is the personal water treatment, 2 is the water efficient fixtures, and 3 is control water use. And I'm going to try to see if I can figure out which one is the most popular one. Oh, there are lots of votes coming in here. Okay, bear with me here. I'm using my fingers to figure out which one is the most popular one. Okay, we'll give everybody a few more seconds. It's close, but there's one that's got a clear lead. Okay. Actually, what I should find out is I should find out how many people are actually on right now. 18 participants. Okay, that gives me a good idea. Okay. I see a very strong lead for number 2, so the voting is closed. I'm just going to put a message in there from myself, gibberish, so that I know that that's where the vote ended. So number 2, all right, let's put it in there. As you can see, people love it, and it is environmentally healthy. And turns out the community of Shoal Lake, which uses Winnipeg's drinking water, that would actually be a benefit to them as well. So low flow faucets, low flush toilets, great idea. Let's throw that in there and let's pick another problem. What do we got here? Cottage wastewater. I don't want to do that one. Balanced fertilizer. Yes, 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 yes. So big issue, fertilizer that are used on crops. It helps make crops grow big and strong. No denying that. But it's expensive and it's filled with phosphorus. So what the plants don't use, it then eventually washes into the rivers and into the lake. So how can we better use fertilizer so that that isn't happening as much? One solution is to use organic fertilizer. So if you replace synthetic fertilizer with, say, heaps of animal manure, it's organic, so it must be better, right? Number 2, inject the fertilizer. Now, most of the time, fertilizer is just sort of spread on the ground and soaks down in. But rather than doing that, why wouldn't we inject the fertilizer right down to the roots of the plant so that it's getting directly to it rather than potentially a lot of it washing off before it gets down to the roots? Or do we use something called a greenometer technology, a handy technology device that can tell you exactly how much fertilizer your soil needs and where a farmer needs to put it? Vote. Number 1, use organic fertilizer. Number 2, inject the fertilizer. Number 3, greenometer. Okay. This is different. I've never done it this way, and it's kind of fun. Okay. Okay. Couple more seconds here. I think it's going to be tough for the other categories to catch up. So I think we're going to declare this one closed. Thank you very much. And yeah, I'm going to close it by putting my gibberish in there so I know where it ends. The majority was for the greenometer. Woo, look at that. It is saving us some money. People love it. It's good for the environment. Let's plop it in there. Excellent choice. Okay. By the way, I do have to say there are no right or wrong answers here. Here's what do I want to use that one? Yes, I do. Do I? Maybe not. No, let's hold off on that one. Sorry, I've learned which ones are the really cool ones that people like to hear about. And I want to make sure I'm using the right one there. Let's go for spread the word. Now, this is what I'm doing. I'm spreading the word to all of you about the issues of Lake Winnipeg. Many of you have heard of it already, but it's important that the word gets out there because people need to understand what their choices are and what their decisions are is affecting the amount of phosphorus that's going into the lake. So how do we spread that word? Do we inform people that are beyond Manitoba's borders? Remember, that watershed extends through 5 Canadian provinces and 4 American states. Do we do some sort of cross-border info campaign? Get that information out there so the folks down in the states and in other provinces know what they're doing to our lake. Maybe and by the way, there was a price warning there just to give you that little heads up. Organize a big ideas competition. So this is kind of like, what those Dragon Den type things do. You've got a cool idea about the lake. Maybe we'll do a contest and you can actually get paid to turn your idea into reality. Or do you stage a protest? Get your signs ready, start rallying the people for the Save Our Lake protest. And I got to say, I know a lot of our audience out there, you're union folks. We never like to go to that stage, but when we need to stand up for our rights, getting out there and showing our side of the issue is definitely very important. So maybe that's what we need to do about Lake Winnipeg, rally the people to save our lake. So again, protests though, some people don't like them. They can block traffic, they can be an impact on people's lives. You can actually make a negative effect by doing these protests. So go ahead and vote. Which one would you like? Number 1, inform people beyond the borders. 2, organize a big idea competition. Or 3, stage a protest. What do we got here? 4, ooh, it's gonna be a close one. Oh, I might actually have to do some official counting here. Yeah, Aaron's saying it's pretty mixed results. Okay, 1, 2, 5, 6, okay, I think we're pretty close to a majority of numbers, and I don't think the other 2 combined will. Yeah, okay, that did it there. Last vote did it there. So the top vote went to number 1, inform people beyond Manitoba's borders. Absolutely, but will it work? We'll only find out if we actually do it. Okay, I want to get a couple more in here quickly. Oh yeah, preserve wetlands. Oh goodness, this is such an important thing. We need to preserve those wetlands that are still remaining, the ones that haven't been drained out. So how do we do that? One of the ways is we give farmers a break. Rather than making them pay taxes on the wetlands that aren't growing crops, we tell them, okay, well, we won't tax you for it if you don't drain them. Or maybe we go even farther and say to farmers, hey, become a steward of the land. We'll pay you to actually take care of the wetlands just as you take care of your farmland. Or do we just flat out say, don't even think about draining a wetland. If it's over a certain size, you gotta leave it or you face fines and consequences. Pretty heavy-handed, but as I said earlier, sometimes that is a necessary thing there. So go ahead and vote. Which one do you like? Removing the taxes, number 1. Oh, I should have put a little blurb in there. Somebody's saying there are active community members who are trying their absolute best to protect the wetlands from private and commercial development. Yes, there are indeed a lot of active groups that are trying to do that. Okay, so 1 was the taxes on wetlands, 2 was to pay farmers, 3 was to ban it. Well, this is going to be another close one here. I'm going to have to do some more math. So that's 3. Sorry, I'm counting with my fingers here. That's never a good sign for me. Oh my goodness. I'm Aaron, are you able to count for me here? That's actually pretty close here. I might actually have to actually jot these numbers down here. So one, two, that's that one. Sorry, folks, this one actually is the closest one of the bunch, and so I want to make sure. Two of those. Okay, yeah, no, I thought it was a little bit closer than this, but it's actually turning out to be. Even the game's going. What are you doing, Mike? Okay, so I think I've got enough here to declare that it was actually a surprising one. People went for number 3, a very heavy-handed thing. But look at that. You got a gold star, but I don't think you're going to make farmers too happy with that one there. So, well, let's put it in there anyways, because sometimes, like I say, those decisions need to be made. Where's a good one here? I want a really good one. What's this one? Yeah. Yard smart. So a lot of the things I've been talking about are things that are issues that seem very big for people. So what can you do at home, in your own house, in your own community, to actually make things better? Could you start a community garden? The idea is, rather than importing your veggies from a city that's thousands of kilometers away, all the environment that's being used or because of that, why not just have a community garden? People do it. There's a few of them out there. It'd be great if there were more. What about your lawn clippings? Now, a lot of people will rake up their lawn clippings, put them into bags. Those bags go into landfills, and all that phosphorus starts to leach into the water systems. Whereas if you leave them on the grass, yes, they're still part of the water system, but it's spread out more naturally across a wider area. And so the ecosystem is able to handle that a bit better. Or do you collect and use your rainwater? Now, we've had a fairly dry winter, so I'm hoping that's not going to lead into a dry spring and summer. Farmers definitely need it. But on average, we get about 500 millimeters of precipitation. We put that rainwater to good use, and we collect it, use it to water our plants, maybe even wash our cars. It could be a great solution. Go ahead and vote. I'm running a little short on time, so I'm speeding things up a little bit here. 1 for community garden, 2 for the lawn clippings, 3 for the rainwater. Go ahead and vote. Somebody says all 3. No. You got to make the tough decision here. Put the vote in there for the one you want the best. There we go. Okay, excellent. Okay, I gotta pay attention here. I think we got another clear winner here. I'll just let the last couple of votes. Oh yeah, it's almost a runaway here. They are all good choices. I agree. No one's saying that you can't do all 3 of them, but it looks like the most people are saying they want to collect and use the rainwater. Another out of the box thinking. Even though a lot of people do it, if we start to mandate it, it actually will be a big help to the system. So a good choice out there. We've got one final one to add in there. I'm going to put my gibberish in there. What am I missing here? I'm missing something from, I was worried that this might happen. There's been a storm that's come through. Now, this doesn't happen too often, but we do sometimes get floods that come in naturally, and they naturally add in phosphorus. So that is a bit of a problem. But I want to find, yes, sewers. I love talking about poop. I just want to relate. Somebody said here, hard to relate these to the lake. I agree, but they were all about impacting what you do outside of the lake, not near the lake itself, that affects what goes into the water systems that then travel into the lake. And yeah, you get one like, informing other people about it. That may not have a direct impact or a short-term impact, but it may eventually have a long-term. So an excellent point that somebody made, I do want to acknowledge it, but in the end, they will all have an impact. So let's do our last one here, because I don't want to run out of time, and I do want to see if there's any questions out there. Improve the sewers. They're old. We need to be able to handle it better. So do we add in more stormwater drains? That flood that we just had could be handled a lot better if we have more drains. Maybe we upgrade our entire sewer system, but that doesn't come cheap. That is pricey. Or do we add in more green space? Let nature do the work for you. Add in more green spaces to slow down water and filter out the rain and snow melt. Go ahead and vote. I see a vote has already come in. That's fantastic. 1 for stormwater drains, 2 for septic system upgrades, 3 for green space. Gotta do my math again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, I see somebody trying to advocate for 1. Okay, clear winner again. Number 3, add more green space. I was thinking a lot of you would choose that. Who doesn't love more green space? Let's put it in there. That's going to end off our game because I see our time is running out at the very end there. Let's see what it did. Did you help the lake? And I'll speed it up here a little bit. This is what the algae bloom looked like at the start. This is what it looked like at the end. Wow, nice job, everybody. We have definitely shrunk that. We've made things way better. That's probably one of the highest ones I've seen so far. Excellent job. But there are other factors that we talked about. It's not just about the algae. Other things are important. So we did another one. Wow, I'm really impressed with that. How about the money factor? Yeah, see, I was worried about that. A lot of people spending a lot of money. It's not the best, but 2 forward-thinking ideas. So I think that's fantastic. So that will do it for our simulator. I'm just being cognizant of time. Aaron, I normally have a wrap up to this, but I think I want to make sure that there are people that can ask questions. Would you agree that we should be going for that?
We did have one question that came in. Somebody was noticing that last spring, that there was a lot of dead carp around Graham Beach and Patricia Beach, and if there was any particular reason that it was worse last spring.
I mean, I personally don't know the answer to that. I would say that it's a likely possibility. I mean, what's happening to Lake Winnipeg is not decreasing. It is increasing, and so it is quite possible that it is having an impact on the fish populations, but I cannot say for sure, so I don't want to give any false impressions or misinformation. Someone in the chat pointed out Gimli also suffered from many dead carp. So one of the slides that I'm not showing you here talks about who is part of the solution. And of course, farmers, Manitoba Hydro, the indigenous population, cottagers, but scientists are also part of that solution. And I would hope that there's been some scientific research into what possibly could have caused that and whether it was related to the eutrophication that's going on in our lake. So someone said, what are some of the household solutions? Okay, well, now you're going to make me go back to my slide here. I'm just going to do it very quickly, Aaron. I know we're running short on time here. But yeah, I mean, how do we find solutions? Okay, so here's my slide showing all the people. I'm sorry, I have to go through it very quickly because I want to get to the slide about how we can do household solutions. All Manitobans are part of this. What you could do, collect that rainwater. That's one example right there. It's easy to do and can be very, very beneficial if everybody does it. Something as simple as picking up dog poop. It should be done anyways, but if you do more of it, then that eliminates some phosphorus. Hazardous chemicals, dispose of them properly. Don't just drain them onto land. Don't drain them into the sewers. That is definitely going to be a problem. Use organic fertilizers, be a part of a community garden, grow your own garden in your own house and share what you have left over with your neighbors, etc. And get into those water efficient faucets, low flow toilets, even something as simple as turning off the tap when you're brushing your teeth. You don't need to let the water run in order to do that. So there we go. Somebody asked for solutions. I'm giving you solutions right there. So let's head back there. Aaron, do you want to take more questions or do you want to wrap?
I think it's time to start to wrap things up because we've hit 8 o'clock and we promised everybody that that is how long it goes. I want to thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today. I want to thank everybody who joined us as well. If anybody is watching and they want to know more about UFCW, or you want to know how you could make your workplace a UFCW 832 workplace, you can always go to our website. You'll also find out more about the SOFA series if you go there, ufcw832.com. You can learn what we're talking about the last Wednesday of the month. And Mike, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. You had a lot of enthusiasm and some practical tips that all of us can put into play. So thank you everybody for joining us, and have a good evening.
Yes, thank you, everybody. Take care.